Morning. Before we start tonight's program, this is a reminder that this episode will address multiple sclerosis and addiction. These topics may be sensitive to some of our viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. We remind you to please consult your doctor, your mental health professional, your outreach group, your sponsor or specialist before adopting any change to your dietary, physical, and/or mental health regime. If you're looking for options to go down with respect to mental health, contact SAMHSA, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, at 1-800-662-4357. Again, 1-800-662-4357. The service is open 24/7, 365 days a year, and is a confidential, free information service for individuals and family members facing such stressors. Also, if you're feeling suicidal crisis or emotional distress and need to be put in touch with a crisis center, contact the Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-8255. Or go to suicidepreventionlifeline.org. You can also text the word HOME to 741-741. Those resources are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year as well. Also, the National MS Society is a collective of passionate individuals who want to do something about MS now, to move together towards a world free of multiple sclerosis. MS stops people from moving. The National MS Society exists to make sure that MS doesn't. To contact the National MS Society, please call 1-800-344-4867. Now again, that's 1-800-344-4867, or go to their website at nationalmssociety.org. And on that, let's begin. Tonight, we're going to talk about bankruptcy. Basically, the synthesis of all the three addictions that we've been talking about for a while now, especially that of the compulsive gambling. We're going to talk about what bankruptcy is for individuals, talk about the different chapters one can file for bankruptcy, but we're also going to talk about the key events along the way that made this an obvious decision. We'll talk about all of that, take your questions and comments, because this is the Venture Forward. It would help for me to press the unmute button, wouldn't it? It's been that sort of day, everybody. Good evening, or good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you may be, and welcome. I am John Venturini, a recovering addict of overeating, obesity, alcoholism, and compulsive gambling. And this is the Venture Forward. This is something that is going to be a bit difficult for me tonight, because a lot of these events are fresh in the sense that a lot of this keeps on going and going and going. And I figured what better place for me to talk about what's going on with respect to this chapter than on the venture forward? Because this has basically been a culmination of realizing the things that have been in my way from the fact that I've done so many destructive things, not only to my body, not only to my mental health, but to my wallet, to my bank accounts. Compulsion and addiction is a very serious thing. And when we get knee deep in addiction, it can hurt us more than 59 Ways to Sunday. So, that said, it is an honor and pleasure to see all of you tonight. I'm going to say hi to some people on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Marilyn, good afternoon. How are you doing? Hope you're doing well. And I think right now I'm only getting YouTube comments for now. But Marilyn, very good to see you. Before I start talking about what's going on, a quick thanks to a dear friend of mine who is a viewer of the VF Talks and also the Venture Forward, and that of Dr. Elo. Dr. Elo, pursuant to the conversation we had on Friday's VF Talks, got me a camera. So we are using new equipment tonight. Thank you, Dr. Elo. Appreciate it. And appreciate you. Today, I ended up sending a whole bunch of documents to a bankruptcy attorney. A bankruptcy attorney that is going to push me through this next chapter of the story. And going through all of that and showing how much debt and this, that, and the other thing is kind of a reprise of what I felt last year when I was dealing with an audit. So I'm a bit emotional right now, and if I seem a bit off, I apologize in advance. But this is also a very necessary step. Have to go through this. If it's not for that, I don't know how I can move forward from this. So we're going to talk about exactly what all of this is in a few minutes. But I think the one thing we have to also go back to is the fact that I've been dealing with addictive behavior for most of my adult life. What does that mean? You know, it talks to the three chief addictions I have. But certainly, when everything adds up, you know it's been a problem many different ways. So, a couple more. Hello, how are you? Hope you're doing well. Yeah, Bern, how are you? Hope you're doing well. And Sarah, coming clean, it's only up from here. Sarah, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. This is tough. This is really tough. But might as well talk about all of this, right? And I'll provide as much detail as I can and talk about exactly how we got here. I think it all started with the realization that going down the road of bankruptcy was the right one, and finding a bankruptcy attorney in the area, which I did. I got a list of 3 or 4 of them. The firm that I'm using came highly recommended, so I'm working with them. And at some point, I'll talk more to who they are. They're doing really well by me right now. So there's a bunch of questions that you go through when you make the realization that, hey, maybe it's time for me to do that. Maybe it's time for me to claim bankruptcy or declare bankruptcy. And there's a bevy of questions that you'll be asked as far as, how did you become bankrupt? How did you become in such massive amounts of debt? Moreover, why was that a problem? What sort of life events got in the way to prevent you from saving money, having a normal, balanced sort of financial routine? Coming to a realization with all that was a very tough conversation. But let's get into this and I'll talk more about it. There we go. Bankruptcy and addiction. That's what this is. Bankruptcy is basically the results of very addictive personality, very addictive behaviors over a very long time. And certainly, this is the summary of all that. I've had addiction for a very long time. I would like to say that most of my adult life has had elements of addiction, very addictive personalities. Whether or not there was the fact that I kept on eating and eating and eating and there was no satiation there, or the fact that when there was alcohol involved, there was no satiation with that either. That one drink became 2 drinks, became a bottle of wine, became 2 bottles of wine, became 4 bottles of wine. And I guess the thing within that is that the alcoholism basically started as social drinking, but after a while became an everyday necessity versus a casual stress reliever. When there's a bottle of bourbon standing right next to the coffee maker, you know you have a problem. A massive one. So we talk about obesity and alcoholism. Well, what else is there? There's compulsive gambling. And the thing that there was such a dopamine trip from gambling. We talked about this on the show before. But it goes back to the sense that there was a false hope and promise that I can obtain a fortune. And the thing is, there were times where I was lucky. There were times that things were great. And I ended up giving it back because there was no such animal association with me. There's no happy medium. We've talked about that phrase before. No happy medium whatsoever. And as far as, the alcoholism and the obesity, well, I was spending a lot more money than I should, looking for those great moments instead of taking accountability of what was going on in my wallet and my bank accounts. I was always looking for the good time. Always looking for the good time. With no bearing on what was going on with me. Was I the life of the party? Maybe I was. I don't know. But I know whatever I am, I'm certainly not. I don't have much to think or say about that except they were good times. But where I am with my life now at nearly 43 and a half, there's a lot more I can do now. There's a lot of things that need to be cleaned up so I can get a good life after this. So I can do the right things after this. That's what this show has been about, is how to remove those roadblocks in the way. And it's easy to identify those 3. But there are other things that are associated with them, like co-addiction, codependency, and then also things that are up the stream from that, such as bankruptcy, financial hardship. It's not easy. This is far from easy. I was coming off of a fresh conversation this afternoon with one of the attorneys. And I know this is going to be a tough road, but look, it's the one thing I've said to some of you that are watching. If I can get through losing nearly 300 pounds, if I can get through being sober for a considerable amount of time now, coming close to 2 years come May, when I'm getting close to the 1 year point with not gambling, I know I can do this despite what was going on around me. Despite that word we can't say on social media because we don't want to be demonetized, despite an audit, despite the ending of a long relationship, despite all of that, I still push through. But now I have to tackle this next chapter. So that's my story. And this is basically what comes out of it. I have an addictive personality, right? I was realizing that looking for a personal loan wouldn't be that bad of a thing if I didn't have an addiction or didn't have a problem with addiction. Of course, it was a problem. And you don't want to know about those APRs that they charge on those things. So instead, I had about 5 personal loans to my name and a bevy of credit cards. And when my net income is about 2/3 of how much I have to pay in a given month, that consolidation credit counseling was long overdue, and we have to start talking about bankruptcy. Bankruptcy is a very scary word. It's an extremely scary word. But you'll find that in the course of a given year, nearly 500,000 to 750,000 people file for bankruptcy. So it's something that a lot of people go through. And I guess I'm part of that community now, in the sense that I'm claiming bankruptcy. So we could talk about bankruptcy left, right, and sideways, but I think it would help many of us that are watching this to talk about what bankruptcy actually is. And I'm going to apologize for the eye test again. Why do I make the font on these slides so small? I don't know. It's something I need to really check my PowerPoint generation skills over here. But in other words, bankruptcy is a legal process through which people or other entities cannot repay debts to creditors, may seek relief from some or all of their debts. Usually in some jurisdictions, bankruptcy is imposed by a court order, often initiated by the debtor. In this case, it wasn't that. I've been very up to date with my bills. I'm just at the point now where I can't continue to pay all of them. There are 6 key chapters to bankruptcy in the United States, pursuant to Title 11 of the United States Code. Not that is going to be any sort of trivial pursuit question, but yeah, Title 11 of the U.S. Code. As Paul's reminding me of font problems. Yes, big time font problems. Thank you. Glad you're here, Paul. Basic liquidation for individuals and businesses, also known as straight bankruptcy, is the simplest and quickest form of bankruptcy available. So basically, if you don't make much as far as money, don't make much in wages, more times than not, you could qualify for Chapter 7. And then there's a test you could take to figure out whether or not you're qualifying for Chapter 7 or any other kind of bankruptcy. When we talk about municipal sort of debts, there's Chapter 9, municipal bankruptcy. Basically, when your township has a problem making their bills, when they are upside down, they would file a Chapter 9 bankruptcy that would go through the U.S. Bankruptcy Court. Chapter 11, now that's the chapter many people have heard of. Chapter 11 is something that many organizations, many incorporations will go through when they have to basically reaffirm their sort of finances, reaffirm their debts, reaffirm their P&L, that sort of thing. So sometimes it can be down to the individual level. Sometimes LLCs will take a Chapter 11. But it's basically a sort of reorganization of that debt so they can still run business, but then have their debt consolidated in a sort of way that they're making their debt, they're working through basically a sort of a system where they can get those debts paid off and yet still do business to, at some point, reaffirm their solvency, reaffirm their profitability, and move out of Chapter 11. Chapter 12 is a rarity, something you'll find around here in Pennsylvania, but if you are a family farmer or a fisherman, you can file for Chapter 12, and there are special nuances to Chapter 12 bankruptcy. Certainly, I'm not a fisherman, I'm not a farmer, so it's just a quick point about 12, but 13 is something of interest. 13 is rehabilitation with a payment plan for individuals to have a regular source of income. Basically coming up with a plan to pay all or part of their debt, and they also nicknamed this the wage earner bankruptcy because the person or people that file for Chapter 13 earn a wage, so they have a mechanism of making some sort of money, but they just don't have a way of paying off all the debtors or all the debts that they have. So they file for Chapter 13. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. 15 is more of another sort of parenthetical in the sense that it has to do with international cases dealing with bankruptcy debtors, and it's basically helping foreign debtors clear debt. For the sake of this conversation, and before I do that, Paul says I can read it. You're just asking the viewer to really want to see it. There are points where I don't want to see this either, Paul. Let's be clear about that. But we're talking about it, and we're seeing it for sure. For the sake of this conversation, we're going to talk about 7 and 13. And the thing is, the first set of questions you'll work with any sort of bankruptcy attorney is, well, what sort of money do you bring in? What is your monthly income? And then moreover, what's your monthly debt? And what sort of short-term debt do you have? What sort of long-term debt do you have? We talk about things like unsecured debt, that's like personal loans, credit cards, and we talk about secured debt, that's things like houses, things that you basically have put down collateral for and has some level of security about it. The amount of unsecured debt versus the amount of money you bring in tells a lot to your bankruptcy attorney. It also gravitates to what side of the story is going to resonate as far as what chapter gets filed. So let's talk about the difference between 7 and 13. 7 is basically a mechanism to reduce your monthly debt repayment load. It basically provides relief from debt collectors. It clears the debt faster with 7 versus 13, but here's the beware. You'll lose some of your assets in it. You can't just file 7 and think everything's going to be great afterwards. There's going to be something that you hand over by way of asset. And also, your credit's going to take a hit for a long time. It's going to stay on your record for 10 years. So when you go to a FICO score or you go to TransUnion score, Equifax, whatnot, that sort of thing resonates for 10 years with a bankruptcy, a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, right? Because in the Chapter 7 bankruptcy, there is no sort of formalized plan for repayment. Usually, more times than not, the folks or individuals that file 7 don't have a regular wage coming in. They might be a gig sort of earner where they don't get a steady income, but they may get income in certain pockets, and their debt test will come up with a 7 instead of a 13. We'll talk about that test in a second or two. When we talk about 13, you have to have sufficient income. And what that happens with the 13 filing is it stopped debt collections and the foreclosure process. So in the case of Pennsylvania, and I know in some of the surrounding states, if you have a way of making money, obviously your first debt payment or the first obligation you have outside of any sort of repayment plan is for a house. So you have a roof over your head. Obviously, this sort of repayment plan, working with a trustee through the U.S. Bankruptcy Court, can help with the repayment of debt. And to discharge the debt, it takes anywhere between 3 to 5 years. The repayment plan, more times than not, they're going to do a test to figure out what the repayment plan is. And then from that, they're going to figure out how much that's going to be based on the sort of money you make versus the requisite expenses you have versus a house versus any... in Pennsylvania, having a car is important too. You have to have a car. But outside of that, anything above that is subject for negotiation. The warning here is, if you can't stick to the repayment plan, you may lose your Chapter 13 status, and then you'd be in the same boat as Chapter 7. You might lose some of your assets. But unlike 7, this stays on your record for only 7 years and not 10 years. So if you could come up with a repayment plan and work through it, working with the creditors to say, this is a repayment plan that I could attest to, that I could help out, I know I could pay, then that's definitely better than 1, ignoring it altogether, or 2, going through it by your own mechanisms, right? And so many people go through basically a payment reconciliation plan. Given what's happened in the last year or so, obviously your credit card companies, your banks or whatnot are a lot more friendly with that. But there's also something to be said about going through this through a bankruptcy sort of mechanism, sort of the way I'm going down. There is something we talked about before called a bankruptcy means test. And the two sites that are up there are on uscourts.gov. So basically, there are two forms that get filled out, the B122 series, to figure out whether you're Chapter 7 qualified or Chapter 13. I'm not going to go through the minutia of the questions in these two tests, except that these are the tests that figure out whether you are a 7 or a 13, and it's something that your bankruptcy attorney would work through to help out with that. We talk about the number of people in this country that file bankruptcy. I kind of gave a glimpse in that number before. Even with what has transpired the last year and change, it's still a large number. And it's a number that I'm surprised isn't larger, given the fact that APRs on credit cards are higher than they ever been before. If you have even the faintest sign of a fair credit score or a poor credit score, you're going to pay for that, obviously, in your credit cards and whatnot. So it's something where you really have to take a look at this sort of thing and realize that there are many people that are in this boat. We're far from alone here, right? So if we look at bankruptcy over the last 10 years, and then I put the numbers for 19 and 20 off to the far right side, you can see that consumer bankruptcy is dropping off, but we're still talking about something where at least 500,000 individuals are filing bankruptcy every year. And during the height of it, in 2010, we were at bankruptcy at 1.6 million individuals. These are numbers, by the way, furnished by MarketWatch.com. Now, granted, the numbers have considerably come down. And in 2019, that number hovers right around where we were in 2018 at 757,000 and change, with 40% of that number filing Chapter 13. When we get to 2020, that number is drastically lower, but not all the statistics are in yet for the 2020 year. So it's an incomplete number, but the number that's currently there as furnished by Acer.com is 529,000 and change, 30% of which are Chapter 13 bankruptcies. It's something where we have to realize that if there's no way around it, and we have to try to we're trying to fix our financial situation, this is an avenue we can go down with respect to that. It's really tough for me to talk about this because, one, it's something I've avoided for a while, but I realize that this is the only possible solution I have. But also, it's a realization of the things that have transpired over the last 20 years that made me realize, well, I've been very lackadaisical with just, very lackadaisical as far as my finances and whatnot. But now I'm doing something about it. And the thing is, if I can do something about my weight, if I could do something about my alcoholism, if I could do something about my compulsion over gambling, if I could do this and get through an audit, if I could do this and get through a major chapter in my life, well, I have no reason not to go down this road to try to get myself to a better place. It's the one thing we've talked about. We want to remove the roadblocks that stand in our way. And certainly this is a roadblock. And pursuing a road such as bankruptcy is definitely a way to remove that roadblock. For sure. A couple of questions and comments. There we go. Sarah says, I was so scared of bankruptcy and so scared of the shame it followed me around that I didn't do it when I should have. I had no advice. It was a long time ago and it was a bad decision. Yeah, I think waiting that long was a very bad decision. I think now realizing that we have a chance to get through this. Now, granted, there is reconciliation there is working with a bankruptcy court and basically a trustee to figure out the right payment plan. But I'm thankful for doing this now and versus not at all. At least here, I have a chance to do something. I have a chance to be better about this. Paul says, "Oh, wow, sorry, Sarah. That sounds hard." It is. It's not easy at all. Gillyman, how many days on the board? Well, are we talking about the number of days I've been tracking food? We're near 2 years. We're at 724 days. We're talking about sobriety. We're at 621 days. And we're talking about the number of days I haven't been gambling, which is pertinent to this conversation, 303. I am a little over 2 months away from having a year not gambling. I am very close to having 2 years with tracking food every day. And in May, I'll be close to 2 years with the sobriety. But Gilly, every day I'm tracking. Every day I'm doing the right thing. I'm doing the good thing. And moreover, it's because of great individuals like you that make it easy for me. I appreciate everything you do in the recovery groups, and certainly you are an inspiration for sure, as everybody in here is. Couple more comments. Very proud of you for doing this. Thank you, Aunt Byrne. Appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot, and I love you. Thank you. And Sarah says, you're getting addicted to taking responsibility. Yeah. Yeah, Sarah, I am. At least I'm doing it now and not long ago, right? I figure it's something that you take responsibility and you become very transparent about it, and you tell your story, and I know that there are a lot of people that go through this. So if I can help people by telling the story, if I can help people by talking about what I'm going through, well, we all get better at this. We as something as Gilly knows, as something as Marilyn knows, we do recover better together. And it's much more than just your basic addictions. It's something like your finances. It's more like, the codependency and the co-addiction. Every single thing we've talked about, we do recover better together. We get stronger together. We can't be remiss of that. Not by any stretch of the imagination. Couple of updates with the MS, because there's a couple updates there as well. I've learned that you could pronounce Ocrevus, and I didn't know that. I talked to the pharmacy over at Penn Medicine, and we have solidified a date for my first Ocrevus infusion, which is a 4-hour infusion, even for the starters, which will be 2 weeks apart in late April. The one thing that this kind of pushes me ahead for is it allows me to get a vaccination for something that I can't mention in name faster, because I have an autoimmune disease. That's something that's suppressing my neurological system. So that puts me in class 1A now. Don't have to talk about what, but I think you can figure what that is. Also have to finish the Hep B and the chickenpox vaccines as well, which I started back in January. But the thing is, for the third round, I don't have to wait for that. I can start the Ocrevus, tomato, sooner rather than later. So there's the good news there for sure. A couple more comments. Sarah says, transparency is key, and it's the hardest part. Yeah, very much. And the thing is, we're afraid of these things, right? We stand afraid of a lot of things that we hold back, that we kind of push underneath the rug. And unless we address it straight on, unless we do that and really figure out a plan, it's going to continue to be a problem. And it's going to become a snowball going down a mountain, as we know from the obesity, as we know from the alcoholism, as we know about the gambling and the finances and all of it, right? So being transparent about it is very important. Thank you for saying that, Sarah. I really appreciate it, as much as I appreciate you for saying it. Ob says, good morning. Ob, I'm glad you're here. Hope you're doing well. This is not your normal, ordinary episode of the Venture Forward. This is something that, we talk about addiction, and we talk about recovering addiction, we talk about health, we talk about the process to lose massive amount of weight. We talk about what we need to stand to stop drinking, to become sober. We talk about the things to remove ourselves from the addictions we have. We very rarely go down the road as far as talking about the financial implications of it. But in my case, there are a lot of financial implications for it. As I'm sure people who have problems with compulsive gambling, more times than not, have problems financially as well. You couple that with a couple of other major life events that I've gone through in the last 2 years. Well, yeah, it stands to reason that unless I do something, I have to go through the U.S. bankruptcy court and try to get this settled, try to get this taken care of, so I can be right side up instead of upside down, right? Couple more comments. Op says, I'm doing awesome, buddy. Glad I caught y'all. Glad you're here, Op. Marilyn says, JV, you're the man. You got this. You are amazing. Marilyn, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And Sarah says, this is making amends to yourself. Yeah. But when we go through the recovery of addiction, when we go through the steps, one of the people we have to make amends to is ourselves. We have to get ourselves to a better place and stick to it and not fall back and keep on doing the right thing. And Op says, nip it in the bud before it grows out of control. Yeah. Because if we're not taking that sort of barometer reading, if we're not taking that sort of understanding of what's going on, it can end up killing us. Not to sound dire about it, but let's be clear. It can end up killing us, right? Gilly says, Bob Dylan was a gambler. He once said, when you got nothing, you got nothing good to lose. Yes. The funny thing about that, Gilly, is when you have something and you have no mechanism to stop, you're going to lose it anyway. And that's the sort of thing that's in the back of any sort of mass gambling and mass casino, mass lottery, or whatnot. They are banking on the fact that you're going to keep on playing. You're going to keep on betting. You're going to keep on pushing the buttons, playing the hands. You're going to do all that. Because at the end of the day, it stands in their numerical favor for you to keep on doing that because they're profitable that way. You never hear about a casino that's not profitable because the games are kind of centered in a way that they're always going to make money doing it. And if you're not going to do it through traditional means, they're going to do it through addicting you. Getting you the right sound effects in the casino. Getting you the right sort of things that keep you gravitating in and in and in. Instead of going for a very short period of time and going back the other way. Very few people do that. Is that the reason why they pump oxygen in? Who knows? But it's something I know I can't be around. It's something that if I'm going to be around it, I'm not touching any of it. I'm going in there to grab dinner, and I'm heading right back out of there. And right now, given the fact that I still don't have the 1 year marker, I'm not even going in there. Not until I hit the 1 year. And even then, I'm grabbing something to eat, and I'm heading out. Ob says, let's hit the like button, peeps. Yeah, like, comment, or subscribe. I appreciate it. I appreciate all of you for sure. Let's talk about Thursday. Thursday, we're going to do something a little more abstract. We're going to talk about the ability of being appreciative of every single moment, whether the moment is positive or negative. And it goes to a really incredible TED Talk I heard right around the time I started going down this road in 19, in the sense that every moment is a gift. Every moment is a gift, and we're going to talk about that. And certainly, it's something that if it wasn't for the realization that I had these roadblocks, if it wasn't for the fact that I had something I needed to work on myself and try to get myself to a better place, there are a lot of gifts that were not understood. But I definitely appreciate these gifts. And it's something that when even we're pressed with the most hard of situations, the most toxic of situations, we have to realize that even that in itself is a gift. We'll discuss what that means on Thursday, 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific. Sober asks the question, Ob asks the question, dinner where, mate? I'm big on steakhouses. I was big with the steakhouses. You couldn't show me a steakhouse that I wasn't a big fan of in any of these establishments. And if you think about it, you're usually talking about something where you're getting people that are playing with lots of money and pretty much reckless with a lot of different things, and you want to give them a big meal, so there's your big meal. Giant steak and a giant lobster, copious amounts of everything. Yeah, that's the sort of place I gravitated to. And now, I could still go for a steak, but I'm pretty much just going to be a steak and a salad. And I'm heading out. There's definitely no alcohol that goes with it. Lots of Pellegrino, because sparkling water is always good. But, yeah. It's realizing the things that make me happy, that are safe for me to enjoy, that I don't have any sort of compulsive addiction to, and celebrating that. If we can get ourselves to a place where we enjoy life that way, and not worry about things that are out to get us, whether it's our mind that's doing it, or the addictions themselves, or both, we're definitely in a better place for it. So, that's my take on that. Given on what's gone on with my pending Chapter 13 and getting that process down the road, I appreciate you guys being here tonight to hear this. I am very much so. Ob says steak and eggs. Steak and eggs are good. Steak and eggs sounds wonderful. If I wasn't having dinner tonight, or if I didn't have dinner already, that would have been a great brinner, breakfast dinner. But steak and eggs, absolutely. And Matt Haas says hello as I'm trying to put a giant bow on this. Matt, hope you're doing well over an hour and change away. And Ob says the last time he ate was 16 hours ago. Steak and eggs sounds wonderful. It is breakfast time. So, enjoy your steak and eggs. But moreover, everybody, have a great night, or great morning, or great afternoon. And I'm going to tell you the thing I tell you at the end of every single venture forward. Stay safe, stay sane, stay strong, stay sober. You're worth it. I'll see you Thursday night at 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific, when we talk about these wonderful moments known as gifts. Because every moment is indeed a gift. Have a great night.